October is my birthday month. My birthday kicks off a number of birthdays for friends and people in the family. So it's the perfect time to share some important information about birthdays with you. I stopped paying attention to how old I was after I learned a few things about age and aging that I think you'd be interested in knowing as well. What I learned was so profound that I literally stopped counting the number of years I've been alive. We used to think of age as a number that predicts illness or death, but we found out that different people with different lifestyles do not have the same physiology at the same age. So we've examined with the infinite diversity of lifestyles that there are on this planet, there are an infinite number of ways that we can age. There are also outdated, preconceived ideas about what you should have or be doing or how you should feel at certain ages. Whatever your chronological age is, which is your actual birth date plus the number of years you've been on the planet, it's not a true measurement of much except for that, how long you've been on this earth. The overview here is that age is not what we used to think it was. There's an incredibly fast advancing knowledge about age that you should be aware of. The more you know about this information, the better off you're going to be, and I want to share it with you. So I hope you stick with me to the end and hear it all. This is Lucy Gable, integrative leadership coach and trainer, author, speaker, and professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine grad program. And this is my podcast, Leadership, Life, Health, and Happiness. First of all, when people ask me my age, I don't think it's an appropriate question. But if they do, I tell them I forgot and I'm not going to calculate it. And that's the truth. I've literally wiped out the importance of that number from my brain. And you might do that also after you've heard this episode. It's been known for many years that the expectation of aging has drastically changed. In the late 1990s, 2 doctors came out with the term real age. They found evidence that the way we live, how we eat, whether or not we exercise, how we sleep, and all the other things like I've spoken about affects how well our body performs and how long we live. Now, we didn't have the genetic evidence then, but they created a test called the real age test. And it was in one of the health clubs I worked in. When I was managing the personal training department, we gave this test to new customers. And then, just like now, most people don't have the healthiest lifestyles, and most of our customers turned out to have a real age that was older than their chronological age. But we could give them a prescription to get that number to change. And of course, it involved joining the health club, getting personal training, getting nutrition advice, just doing all the things that we know are good for our health in the first place. In grad school, in about the 2000s, I read studies on how the internal musculature of 60-year-old athletes could look like the internal musculature of 30-year-olds. To me right there, that was a sign that exercise was absolutely a fountain of youth. We can have the internal body of someone 30 years younger. And there were already people accomplishing it. That was just the beginning of our findings. It was around 2010 when I read my first article about how your DNA looks different depending on whether or not you exercise. How do you think that is? Well, when you exercise, your genes look younger. When you don't exercise, they look older. And this is based on the telomeres. Telomeres are the ends of the DNA strands, kind of like the protection that you find on a shoelace on the ends, and they get shorter with age. But we found that exercise keeps them longer. And as we study genetics more and more, we find that the entire lifestyle has an effect on your DNA and the length of your telomeres. We're also finding that there are other parts of the DNA that are affected. Your lifestyle will turn on or off specific genes that cause you to start to deteriorate or keep you young and vital. Now that's a big deal. In case you're not thinking this already, that's a big deal, because your DNA is the blueprint that your cells use to replicate. If you have DNA that says you're younger, more vibrant, healthier, stronger, then you actually are that, right? So now we know what you eat, how you sleep, whether or not you exercise, all the kinds of emotions that you feel on a regular basis, things that you're thinking that make you stressed or calm you down, whether or not you think positively. These kinds of things ultimately affect your DNA. And in turn, of course, that affects your skin, your hair, your eyes, your brain, your heart, your cardiovascular system, your digestive system, everything down to the cellular level. There are also outdated, preconceived ideas about what you should have or be doing, or how you should feel at certain ages. Even though these notions are outdated, there still tends to be a category that people put each other into when it comes to age. For example, someone might say, "How old are you?" And based on the number you give them, they will evaluate your life. And I don't know if you've thought about this, but most likely you're also evaluating your life based on your age. So it was during grad school that I decided to stop measuring my life according to my age, because I knew that I was going to adopt an extremely healthy lifestyle. And if I kept going, my real age would be much younger than my chronological age anyway. I also knew that I didn't want these outdated cultural norms and expectations to subconsciously influence my brain and affect how I felt, whether or not I felt accomplished in life, or affect how I felt inside my body. In college, I minored in psychology. Far before then, I was an observer of psychology. And I noticed how some people around me, early on in age, would stand up from a chair and groan, and then say something like, "Oh, I'm getting old, my knees," or whatever, "my back," And I would say, don't say that, because what you think in your mind, which is equivalent to what you're saying to yourself, is what you end up becoming. When we repeat things over and over in our heads, that is what we end up experiencing in life. And I have many stories about how that works. But I'll generally say here that the reason is because our brain seeks out what we focus on. When we think about something, our brain finds the stuff that we're thinking about. And you can try this on yourself in any situation. Experiment with how you think and see what ends up turning up in your reality. There are a lot of different psychological theories on how this works. But one thing we know is there's evidence that it is true. And throughout my life so far, I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've witnessed it many times, how different people's personalities and the way they thought about things and spoke about things tended to predict what's happened to them as they went on. And now we have scientific evidence that people who think younger stay younger. What does that mean? Well, one of the ways we think younger is to have a purpose in life and have dreams to accomplish. People who stay curious and like to learn, people who like to play and laugh and like to be social, these people have been shown to live longer and stay healthier. As I teach at the GW University School of Integrative Medicine, I've had conversations with some doctors about this. We've discussed how age can be a predictor of certain things, certain illnesses, certain tendencies to have illness. But when we factor in lifestyle and attitude and emotions, and social life and mindset, age is not the strongest predictor of health or capabilities. There's also building evidence now that humans have the potential to be strong and vibrant and agile and mobile all the way up to the last day when they just lay down for a long sleep. Unfortunately, here in America, we have too many people spending the last 10% of their lives in a nursing home or in a hospital, somehow infirm and not able to function. Well, it doesn't need to be this way. And if you tune into social media and start watching for it, you'll see more and more people accomplishing things at ages that you would never have imagined. I just saw a marathon runner in his 90s. And I'm collecting these videos because one day I'm going to put them together and share with you some of my compilations. But until then, hopefully you're imagining what your life can be like if you start to focus on how so many people today are carving out a completely different shape for their life as time goes on. And you can be one of those people. You can be on the forefront of what we now know about being healthy and strong all the way to the end. And you can make a shift at any time. I'm just going to tell you a couple of stories of people that I've known that have drastically changed their life at an age that you might think it wasn't possible. I've seen people with diabetes drastically reduce their need for medication and be able to handle their blood sugar better after adopting healthier lifestyle habits. I've seen people with high blood pressure reverse it. I've seen people with cardiovascular disease reverse it. I've seen people with arthritis reverse or drastically reduce it. When I was a personal trainer, a very old-looking man came in, stooped over, shuffling his feet, barely walking. He looked really frail. As it turns out, he was 90 years old, and he had a desire to swim and play golf again. He was tired of feeling tired, and he wanted to live the rest of his life. I had him start gently stretching, lifting weights according to his abilities, practicing walking with correct posture, and eating better. And after less than a year, he was doing all the things he wanted to. He was thrilled. His life changed and had taken on a new meaning. I also worked with an 82-year-old woman who lost her sense of balance. She was afraid to walk without touching the wall. She couldn't walk down the stairs. She didn't want to go out to get the mail because she was afraid she would fall. And she thought this was the prison she'd have to live in for the rest of her life. Within under a year of strengthening and stretching and doing balance exercises, not only was she standing, she was walking up and down her stairs. She wasn't only going to her own mailbox, she was walking up the hill that she lived on. She was completely self-sustaining again. Imagine that. Some people would say it's a miracle, but this happens all the time. As I was dictating these notes for this episode on my phone, I was walking in my area and I noticed a home health aide coming out of someone's home with the garbage. She was taking the garbage out for this person. Listen, when you get old enough, you can certainly hire someone to get your mail for you and take out your garbage and all the other physical things you can't anymore. Or you can hire a good personal trainer now and find out what it's like to have a well-rounded exercise program and not need help with that kind of stuff later. You have more control over your life than you think. The more you know about this information, the better off you're going to be. This is the first time I'm talking about these things on this podcast, but it won't be the last. Let me know if any of this intrigued you and what you might like to hear about in future episodes. This is Lucy Gable. I'll talk to you next time.